And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show. I am Michael Gaddis at michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. I am here with my special guest, Chris Cooper of chriscooper.com, and he is a private fiduciary. And I have a question for you. Why use a private fiduciary and not children?
Well, the laws actually in all the states are really geared at family members being appointed your executor of your will or being named conservator of you if you needed a conservator in California. So really the whole picture of it was originally written for family. But as many of us have, we're all living all over the United States. I mean, for example, I have a sister living in Tennessee, one living in Ohio, and my brother in Philadelphia. Okay, who would come to my need if I needed someone to be my conservator? I don't have anyone because none of them are residents of this state. So therefore I need a professional in my case because I don't have anyone else to serve. My daughter lives in Ohio. My other family members don't live here, see? So that's one of the examples where you would use a private fiduciary. The other times you might use a private fiduciary as opposed to family is when there's conflict. When you know that it's like, okay, if I let older sister be in charge of this because I can't let older brother do this because older brother has a gambling problem or has some other issue going on, then you're going to have a fight, and it's like, no, it's easier just to hand it to a third party and let the third party deal with it and let them referee between them as opposed to trying to let the family deal with it themselves. A lot of the cases that end up in our courts here, Michael, are family members fighting over trusteeships of trusts or executorships of estates. Okay, so it is a lot of that conflict does come up about there. So that's where we do find the private fiduciaries being more appropriate in that appointment. But also there's other times when it's just convenient. It's like, I don't want to be bothered with this. I don't want my children to have to be bothered with this. I want them all to be treated equal and fairly. I'd rather have a third party deal with it than try to let one of them do it. But I can also tell you there's only about 550 of us licensed in the state of California. There's not enough of us. So there's going to be plenty of times when children are going to be needed to work in these fiduciary capacities, even if it's just being their healthcare advocate. That's a big job right there in itself.
Well, let me tell you something. You know, as everybody knows, I help people sell real estate. And I will tell you that about 6 to 8 months ago, I was helping somebody sell a big piece of commercial real estate up in Los Angeles. They had a fiduciary. An attorney was acting as a fiduciary for this particular these three children whose mother had just passed away. And when I met with the children, one of the children in particular says, "Well, I don't know why my mother got a fiduciary involved." He goes, "We're all educated people. We're all able to take care of this, and I just don't understand why she did this." And at first, I didn't really pay much attention to him. I was just kind of like, "Oh, okay, I heard him," and I went on doing what I was supposed to do. But let me tell you something. As the real estate transaction went on, I could literally see these three children change. Their mother knew something about them that they didn't know about themselves. And when we tried to sell the property, there was constant conflict and infighting. Nobody could get along. They were arguing about everything. Nobody could agree on the price. Nobody could agree on the terms. Nobody could agree on when. It was literally out of control. In fact, the fiduciary, who was an attorney, he kept calling me and say, "These kids are driving me nuts." He goes, "I'm trying to involve them in the process as much as I can to basically, so that they, everybody feels that they had a part in the decision." He goes, "But pretty soon I'm just going to have to make the call." And I told him, I said, "Look, if you don't make this call soon, we're going to lose this buyer." And I said, "And I guarantee you we're not going to get another one anywhere close to this. So somebody has got to pull a string sometime, or this is going to turn out to be, it's not going to be good." So finally he made the call. And two of the three children went hysterical because they were on polar ends. See, the children there were 3 of them. One was on one side, the other was on the other side, and there was one in the middle. So the one in the middle was okay with the fiduciary. It's the 2 on the other side that were just hysterical about this, right? They did not want, this property to be sold without some sort of a consensus. But the fiduciary was under a time constraint that was imposed in the trust. The mom was very specific about when and how the property was to be sold, and he was complying by the terms of the trust. And so the only reason I mention that story is because, to me, a lot of people out there listening might think, oh, well, my children are very educated, and I think they get along great. Children get along great until money's involved. Once a parent or a loved one disappears, and there's nobody there to mediate, and it's just it's a free-for-all, and all of a sudden people change, and it affects their relationships with each other the rest of their life. My personal opinion after this is you need an independent third party, someone who's not emotionally attached to the product, and that can basically just fulfill your wishes without all of this infighting. I mean, I know I'm sounding really passionate about it right now, but I've seen the effects of it. And that's not the only time as a real estate professional I've been involved in that situation. And for me, I've got people calling me. I've got the fiduciary calling me. I've got the kids calling me. Everybody's telling me all these stories. And and to me, I'm like, wow. It's a really passionate situation, and my job is just to do one thing, is to sell that property for as much as I possibly can, and to make sure that all the legalities of the transaction are taken care of. But it's tough to be in, let's say your shoes, when you've got a bunch of bickering children there, our brothers and sisters who are, whoever the beneficiaries are, infighting, and you're the one that has to make the call.
And it sounds like this attorney who is acting as a fiduciary was in his first attempt at being a fiduciary.
That might be the case.
It's tough. This is one of the harder jobs that we do, because when you're dealing with like real estate in particular, the price is so unknown. It's not like, okay, we can go to this little blue book and I can look up, a 1997 Continental and with black on black and all this, and I can see what price it is in a book. Real estate has all kinds of variances, and of course everybody gets their opinion, right? And so that's where
everybody's an expert. Everyone's an expert.
The other one you get into with real estate too is like, where should mom or dad live, or where should the brother or sister that has special needs, where should they live? And then this gets into the argument of, oh, should they just go to the board and care facility? Should they be in the assisted living? No, they need to be in the nursing home. That's another one where you see a lot of family conflict, and also where it needs a professional, a third party, who is not working for any of these places, being able to mediate a dispute between the parties, which are usually between the children.
Yeah, I know, and that's a good example, because I hadn't thought about that, because I'm only involved usually in the real estate aspect of it, not necessarily. I guess in my own personal situation, my sister and I are on board together on exactly where my father should be. We take advice from the medical professionals, and we talk about it, and there's no conflict for us, but. In our situation, there's no assets either, so it's not like we're trying to maneuver to try to get something or anything like that. It's just we're literally just looking out for his well-being and trying to guide it as much as possible. But when money gets involved, it affects people, and when you have larger assets, or you have things that that come with having the parent live with you versus going to assisted living. I mean, there are reasons. I mean, I've heard stories where people will not report their parents as passed away so they could keep getting Social Security checks because they were living with them. So I mean, there's a lot of economic factors that go into it. Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am talking to Chris Cooper of chriscooper.com, a professional fiduciary. And one of the things I want to say, what are the pluses and minuses of using a corporate fiduciary versus a private fiduciary?
Well, corporate fiduciary primarily works with trust and estates. So you don't see them come out and be dealing with the person individually, such as being their advocate under their healthcare directives, or having to do the things that the individual would need, such as being able to sign their personal tax return, be able to represent them in front of the taxing authorities, being able to make withdrawals from IRAs and things like that. Those fall to the durable power of attorney, and so the corporate trustee has a more limited scope. Now, a corporate trustee can bring a lot of resources and knowledge on how to handle many things, But one of the problems we're seeing for the corporate trustees is that they're not very profitable when they're handling sizes of estates below $10 million. And this is why a lot of them will actually refuse to take the successor trustee even when they're named in the document. And so we can either have to end up in court and have a private fiduciary appointed, or you have to amend the document hopefully beforehand and you name a private fiduciary then, as opposed to having to name a corporate trustee, because again, corporate trustees need a certain volume of assets and money in order to be able to handle all the work that they're going to have to deal with. So a lot of times what you're seeing, anything at 10 million and down, they're better served now with the private fiduciary market. This is something that's relatively new. It's something we've only had since 2009 here in California, so it's definitely something that consumers are not as aware of. Not even all attorneys are aware of it yet. So this is something that you may want to be thinking about for your own planning.
Well, after the break, we're going to continue our discussion with Chris Cooper of chriscooper.com. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.